Catherine Jane Garner.
Why am I in trouble?
Thank you very much for being first cab off the rank in doing this Tapestry of Faith this morning. Introduce yourself as if these people have never met you before. What would you say?
Hi, my name's Catherine. My pronouns are she, her. I attend Leichhardt Uniting Church. I am the eldest of 5. I am 39 years old. I work in the public mental health care system. I live in Campsie. I'm allergic to cats and straw and hay. I hate Christmas and I love Easter. I'm really obsessed with this country music playlist I've put together recently. And for the 3 months of summer, I will eat my body weight in Super Dupers on a weekly basis.
Do you need to know any more?
I can go now, right?
Let's go from the top. You are the eldest of 5. Is that like Marsha extreme? Like, what was it like being the eldest of 5? Tell us a bit about your childhood.
So I have 3 adult siblings. I'm the eldest. So me, my brother James, my sister Adelaide, and my brother Chris. Those are my 3 adult siblings, and you can kind of tell my dad's an accountant because we're all almost exactly 18 months apart. It's girl, boy, and we're all slightly old for the school year because my dad had this theory that if you were old for your school year, you'd be a leader and not a follower. There's no scientific evidence for this. It's just one of his theories.
Were you a leader and not a follower? Yes? Okay.
I mean, like, if you wanted to be led in Model United Nations and debating and choir, like, I was like nerd leadership.
Cool.
And then my youngest brother, Sandy, is 9. Mm-hmm. I was 30 when he was born. It's very strange to have a baby brother when you're in your 30s. And like, when he was little, I would take him places and I would like babysit, and people would think he was my kid, and I would be like, how dare you? I am but a am I a child bride? And then I was like, oh no, it's actually totally normal for a 30-year-old to have a 9-month-old. Like, that's actually, you need to calm down. But yeah, I grew up in Sydney, grew up going to an Anglican church in Chatswood West where my mum still goes. Went to a North Shore private school with all of the complexities and weirdness of that. And then
we'll pause
some
there.
other stuff happened.
Growing up in the Anglican church, what are some fond memories you have of there? What are some memories that you're like, no thank you?
I love church and like have loved church my whole life and did heaps of church. Like, I taught Sunday school, like as a teenager, I taught Sunday school in the morning. I went to the evening service. I led a Bible study at school. I was a sacristan, which is where you like arrange the flowers and the altar and do the Bible readings.
Me too, girl.
Yeah. All the cool girls are doing it.
Totally.
So I did heaps of church stuff, and it was a real source of community, and I loved that. And so that is like really, I think a really beautiful part, and I think forms the kind of values foundation for how I do lots of things now. There was a lot of like weird misogyny happening. Like, like a guy came and spoke at my school and was like, well, if you have sex with more than one person, your body's like used chewing gum. And like, why would somebody want to marry an old car? And I was like, I don't think anybody wants to marry cars at all, sir, but okay. Like, just, so I could have done without the purity culture and the subtle homophobia. Like, I was so church that I think that if I had been in a church where women could lead, I'd probably be in ministry. But I didn't know it was allowed. I didn't see a woman preach in an Anglican church until I was like 27 and living in a whole different state.
Do you think you, growing up in church, grew up with always a conception of God, grew up with a faith, or was it something that did you have a moment of coming to your own faith? How did that happen for you?
I don't ever remember not believing in God. The story that my dad tells is that I turned 3 and he was like, okay, time for Sunday school, as though there's like a compulsory enrollment age. So I don't ever remember not going to church. I don't ever remember not believing in God. It like, it waxes and wanes, and, after coming out was like, maybe I'll be like a Unitarian Universalist. And then was like, no, thank you. And like, oh, maybe I'll be a...
Waited back out.
Yeah, I was like, that's cool for you guys, not for me. Okay. I dabbled with being a Quaker. I was like, nope, too quiet, not enough talking. That can't handle that. Just, but like God has always felt real and present for me.
Has there been a time in your life where you're like, I don't really think that God is real? Or has there always been a sense that there is a God?
God feels real in my body in a way that I find quite hard to articulate. Like if I stop and I like think the thought like maybe God isn't real, and then I like, scan through my body, it's like my organs like ugh, yuck. You know, like it feels real in my body in a way that is very not able to be super well articulated.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable, you don't have to, talking about what it was like to reconcile your sexuality and be part of a church that had, particular teachings around sexuality?
Yeah, we can talk about that because I just kind of skipped it. Like I was attending a very conservative Baptist church in Pennant Hills.
Are you like doing church denomination bingo? What is this?
I like to see what my options are. I'm doing a lit review. Mostly it was because they had a big, youth and young adult program, and a friend of mine went, and she and her mum would give me a lift. So I realised I probably wasn't straight, got my first girlfriend about 10 seconds later, and then 2 weeks after that I was sitting in church, and it was this big service, and it was a Baptist church. They had a pool in the middle of the stage that they popped out, which I had never seen before, and was like, wow, that's weird. And just had this moment of being like, oh, wow, if everybody here knew that my girlfriend was 3 streets away playing soccer with her soccer team, they wouldn't want me here.
They wouldn't want you here? Was that really the sense?
Yeah, and so I was like, I just won't go back. And then I didn't do any church stuff for at least 12 years. And the whole time my feeling very strongly was, God and I are fine, it's the church and I that have got dramas. I think once I understood my own queerness, the truth of that, I was like, well, I didn't choose this, so I love how Henry is just Roman. That man, he's a busy man, he's got places to go. So good.
Once you can walk, you walk, right?
Yeah, of course. The truth of my queerness felt so certain in my body, and the truth of God being real felt so certain in my body. I was like, well, this is just how it is. I didn't wrestle with it that much. God and I didn't wrestle with it. God and I have always been chill.
Okay.
The church and I, we've had some disagreements.
Was there grief when you decided to leave?
I think it was I love the community of church. And I've been thinking about community and church a lot recently, preparing to preach in February. And I think community is our umbrella against bad weather. And I want everybody to have a really big umbrella that we all feel safe to share together. And so I think the community is the thing that I missed. And also I basically lost all of my friends from high school immediately because they were all not affirming. And there was one moment where a friend of mine called me sobbing at 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, what is going on? And she was like, I'm just so sad because I'm going to go to heaven and you're not going to be there. Yeah, oof. I was like, cool. Well, I'm going to go now because this is really awkward. So I think there was some sadness and loneliness in that, but I was also just busy being 18 and messy and getting into mischief and...
Sure.
Yeah.
So tell us about those 12 years. So you went to university, I assume?
Yes.
Yep.
So I'm a person who lives with mental illness, and I had my first really big period of life-interrupting mental distress towards the end of the second half of year 12. And so I kind of noodled around doing not heaps, trying to get the wheels back on the wagon for a couple of years. Then I went to uni in Wollongong for 3 years. Then I moved back to Sydney. I lived in Sydney for a year. Then I moved to Brisbane. I lived in Brisbane for 5 years. Had a really strange assortment of jobs. And then 2017, I moved back to Sydney. When I was in Brisbane was when I had I remember sitting on the balcony of my apartment and just having this feeling of really missing dinner after church on a Sunday night and just being like, oh. And then was like, I could probably have that if, like, I could have a look around. So I did what every queer Christian in the world has done, which is Google gay church near me.
Yes, is that a Google thing in people's histories? Yeah, okay.
And so I dabbled at a few churches. Went to this Presbyterian church that I really liked, but then I wasn't there one week, and so I listened to the sermon on podcast, and it was like really hardcore, like hell, fire and damnation, Sodom and Gomorrah business, and I was like, oh no, thank you. Your music is great, but this is not. And so I ended up at Metropolitan Community Church Brisbane, which was like, it was meeting in the basement of a office building in South Brisbane, which had flooded in the 2010 floods, and you could still see like the tide marks on the wall, and there were like 6 people, and the sermon was on the prodigal son, and I was like, yes, God, you're very funny. That's ironic.
Me, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, the Lord of all creation is making fun of me.
Yeah.
Cool. And the minister was married to a man, and they were like competitive dash hound breeders and showers, and I was like, this is great. And the only other young person in the room bounded up to me after the service and was like, you're young, let's be friends. And I was like, okay. And so yeah, I was there until I moved back to Sydney, bopped around a little bit. Then I spent 3 years at Burwood Croydon Uniting Church, which I love very much, and then March last year, I came to Leichhardt.
Nice.
I've been here ever since.
Somewhere in the midst of that, you also did some work for the Greens?
I didn't work for the Greens. So for 3 years, I was the co-convener of the Australian Greens, which is essentially being like the president of the party. So it was my unpaid job to run all of the meetings and organise all the campaigns and do all of that stuff. It was like having a second job. It was, but I didn't get paid. Which is why anytime I like run a big meeting at church, people are like, wow, you're so brave. And I'm like, yeah, but this isn't a 300-person Zoom meeting in the middle of COVID where someone's going to call me racist. So I reckon I'm chill. I'm okay.
Yeah, it's all
yeah,
relative. Have you always been interested in politics? I mean, the fact that you offered or were elected as co-convener of the Australian Greens means presumably that's a big part of who you are and how you live your life. How do your politics and your faith intersect?
I like, they're so inextricably linked that it feels weird to try and talk about them connecting. My dad's quite conservative. We have quite different political views. Meanwhile, I have a degree in politics and gender studies. And he, particularly when I was younger, would be like, oh, I don't know how you ended up this like lefty feminist, grumble. And I was like, my guy, you told me I could do whatever the boys could do, and you raised me in a religious tradition that said I should love my neighbour. That isn't just the people I know. It also means that I think we should invest in foreign aid. And I think I just really believe that Christians spend way too much time thinking about what is going to happen to me when I die instead of thinking about what is happening for us right now. Like, I kind of, eschatology and thinking about what happens when you die and all of that stuff is like very good and important, but it's not for me. For me, I want to be thinking about like, what can we be doing to live the kingdom of God here and now, like right now in this second, in my community, in the people I know and the people I don't know. They're so inextricably linked. Like, James is my favorite book of the Bible for a reason.
Yeah.
My partner says, until this year, my partner's joke was that every sermon I've ever preached could be subtitled "Jesus Loves Socialism." Yeah.
Up until this year?
Well, then I started preaching on the Old Testament.
Sure. Hard to make that as much of a connection. Yeah. Do you think the tertiary study that you did, was there some unlearning you had to do through that study from the childhood church teachings around, say, women or, you know?
I don't think it was unlearning stuff that I had been taught so much as filling in the gaps.
Yeah, okay.
Like, there was just a bunch of stuff I'd never really thought about and had just kind of accepted, and then was like, oh, turns out, like, you know, like really basic stuff like, there are 2 versions of the creation story in Genesis. Never really thought about that before. What does that mean for us? Or like, hey, David was a pretty complicated guy. What does that mean for us when we read the Psalms? And I think the one thing, having studied theology, like the biggest thing I took from that is that anybody who says to you, well, the Bible says, doesn't know what they're talking about ever at all, and we're all making interpretive choices. Like I am making an interpretive choice when I read the Bible to say Jesus loves socialism, as much as, you know, a conservative pastor is making an interpretive choice when they read the Bible and says, you know, whatever it is they might believe. Like was much more about like, thinking about the role of women, which I just never really thought about before. Like, you know, somebody once said to me like, oh, well, there would have been heaps of women and children at the Last Supper. And it blew my mind. I was like, oh, yeah, there would have been. But I just never thought about it because nobody had said anything about it.
And the artwork's never,
Yeah, you think it's like 12 guys having like a really quiet bro dinner, but actually...
On one side of the table.
Yeah. Like a Real Housewives dinner. It's weird, we sat like this and the camera's so perfectly positioned. But yeah, it wouldn't have been like that. There would have been women and children and animals and, you know, laughing and, you know, heaps of stuff. But I just never thought about it. I didn't question it because it was taught in this way of like, we've got this fundamental, unshakable truth, and kind of if you question it, you don't really believe. So just go with it.
This may be a difficult question, but why are you a follower of Jesus today? What is it about it that keeps you wanting to, be in this thing, be in this church?
I think partly it feels true in my body in a way that I can't ignore, in that being in church and being in a faith community is so good for my soul, brain, body, mental health, all of that stuff, that like I can't ignore that. I think partly I'm quite lazy and selfish and grumpy, and I don't really like anything or anyone, and I need something to not sit in that space. Like my natural tendency is to despair and to think that everything is ruined and that everybody's awful, but that's just not true. And I desperately want to be part of something bigger than myself. I think that's so important. And if I were to create a spirituality on my own, it would just be like, well, you know, of course you don't have to get out of bed. Of course you don't have to be nice to that person, you know,
Nice. At the beginning, when you introduced yourself, you talked a bit about your life today. Tell us a bit more about the work that you do currently.
I love my job so much. So I am a mental health peer support worker, which is just a fancy way of saying that I'm a person who lives with mental illness, life-interrupting mental distress, and I work with people who are having a hard time to help them work out what their biggest, best, beautiful life with or without symptoms might look like. So I spent 2 years working on a project in Campbelltown, working with people who had never been able to see a therapist before, so they would get paired with a psychologist and a peer worker to do those things. You know, like I worked with a woman who was agoraphobic and hadn't left her house in 7 years, and, you know, that kind of stuff. I then spent 4 and a bit years working as a peer worker at the Children's Hospital in Randwick, so working on the adolescent acute mental health unit, which was really, really fun. I love working with teenagers, because adults, you'll make a suggestion, you're like, hey, do you want to try this, like meditate, this like mindfulness practice? And they'll be like, maybe, I don't know. But like a teenager, you're like, hey, you want to try this thing? They're like, no, that's dumb. I'm like, great. I've got 150 things we can try. I just want to do what's going to work for you. Communicate directly with me. That's excellent. And so now, for the last 2, coming up on 3 years, I have been a senior peer worker, which means I oversee a team of 17 peer workers who work across inpatient and community in southwest Sydney, so from Bankstown to Bowral, working with people, children, adolescents, old people, people hearing voices, people experiencing depression, a whole bunch of different things.
And when you're not working, what do you do?
Go to church meetings.
Yes, you do. Specifically, what are the roles you have?
So I am chair of Leichhardt Uniting Church Council, and I am deputy chair of Sydney Presbytery. So Uniting Church is a series of kind of geographic groups. Presbytery is our regional group. So at the moment it's kind of think about like Bondi to Burwood. There's a transition happening later in the year where our presbytery will get much bigger and it'll go from Bondi to Broken Hill. So it'll be kind of the whole centre of the state called Central Presbytery. And so in both of those roles, I just go to meetings and try and be helpful and, you know, do fun, cool stuff like write policies and read policies. And I don't know what I do. I send a lot of emails. I go to a lot of meetings. I have a lot of conversations.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to throw out if there's any questions any of you would like to ask before I ask our traditional final question. Just raise your hand if you've got a question you want to ask. Yeah, Athena. Mm. So connecting, or the intersection of mental health and faith.
Yeah, so I feel really lucky to have missed that particular kind of streak of toxic theology that's super hurtful to people. So I largely missed that. I also feel one of my brothers has a learning disability that was diagnosed when we were quite little. I think I would have been like 5 or 6, he would have been 3 or 4. And in our family, we had a lot of conversations about everybody's brain works differently. Everybody's good at different things. Just because you're good at reading and somebody else isn't doesn't mean that you're better or smarter. So I think having that come in at a really early age, I think meant that it was easier for me to just be like, well, God makes brains in a whole bunch of ways, and I probably wouldn't have chosen to have a brain that likes to make me crushingly sad, but I do. And so then the question is, like, how can I see the way that my brain works as a gift from God and treat myself as a beloved child of God rather than as a problem to be solved or a deficit that needs to be fixed. And I think also, like, church is so central to keeping my ship afloat. Like, when I had a period of like pretty rubbish mental health when I was living in Brisbane, and I had a mate at the time who was an atheist, and every week for like months, every Sunday afternoon he would pick me up, he would drive me to church, he would drop me off, he would sit in his car for 2 hours, he would pick me up and take me home, because he was like, this is so good for you and it's so nice to hang out with you after you've been at church. That, like, you know, he was like, that was how he demonstrated care. Like, for me, peak mental health is if I can go to church like 2-3 times a week. And it's really, really central to like returning to community, returning to song, returning to prayer is like really, really essential. And also remembering like God, like lamentation is all through the Bible. It's a whole book of the Bible. You know, like I think has been this idea of like, well, if you really love God, you'll be happy all the time. But God doesn't ask us of that. And there's lots of parts of the Bible where people are really sad and really awful things happen. And we shouldn't shy away from that. We should accept that that's part of the range of human emotions that we were made to experience and feel.
Thanks, Athena. Anyone else? Yeah, Renee.
I think about my brain like a vine, and if you put a vine on a wall, it'll like climb up and it's happy and having a nice time. If you don't put the vine on the wall or some kind of like climbing frame, it just grows into like this weird twisty little knot that eats itself, and that's my brain. Like my brain, I thrive, I do best when I am busy, and so part of, maintaining my mental health is being busy and is having extracurricular stuff going on. It's constantly trying to thread this like really tricky needle of like enough going on that I feel good, but not so much going on that I feel swamped. I am very lucky in that my partner is extremely supportive, sometimes to the point of self-identifying as a meetings widow. So like, if it was just me on my Todd, trying to do everything, it would be my clothes would be less washed and I would eat less vegetables. I think that's part of it. I also think I genuinely find this stuff, like 95% of the time, I genuinely find this stuff super energizing. And like, I think maybe the most consistent piece of feedback I received from Radhika is like, I turn up to a meeting being like, it's meeting time, guys, let's go. And Radhika's like, you're so weird. I'm like, yep, I was just born this way, And some people are like really excited to stand at the front and lead worship. I'd rather shave my head. Like, oh, no thank you. Or like, the idea of singing in front of everybody and leading worship, I'm getting a fierce sweat just imagining it.
I was going to ask you to, but no. Okay, never mind.
No, thank you. But like, I genuinely do, most of the time feel it's really, nourishing and fulfilling and intellectually stimulating. And I think it's really nice to do church stuff because like, when I was doing politics, it was much more adversarial. And often people didn't have the same values foundation. Whereas in church meetings, we're often making decisions from the same values base. Like we're all thinking about what it means to be a good steward. And the end result of being a good steward might look different for me than it does for somebody else. But we're still coming from that same place, which I think makes it, really nice. And yeah.
Yeah, Deepa.
Do I read long theological books? Sometimes. Not as often as maybe I could or should. What prompted book club was buying books and reading books are two different hobbies.
Christina McHale would 100% agree, yep.
One of them I'm exceptional at, and one of them I am slightly less good at. And so partly it was to give me some motivation to read books. Also, my favourite thing about studying theology was that bit where you got to be in conversation and you get to build the idea together. And I say, like, well, what if Job meant this? And then you say, oh, but what if you added this bit? And then somebody else comes in and says, oh, what if we did this anti-colonial reading? Like where you get to build the idea, and like playing with and in ideas is one of my favourite things. And so getting an opportunity to do that was part of book club.
I was going to say, going back to Renee's question, that one of the things I really admire about you is how seriously you do take self-care. So, Mondays are what for you?
So I have negotiated a compressed working week. So I work 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days, which means that I have Mondays free. And mostly that is the day where I like do my washing and do my meal prep, and I try not to do too much other stuff. It also is the time that I spend, so during school holidays, I have every Monday with my niece and nephew, and I hang out with those guys for the day, which is really fun and so tiring. Like I've never once left and been like, gee, I wish I had kids. I leave every time being like, how do parents do this? I'm so tired. But yeah, it's like that's, I think, having that bigger block of time. I'm trying to get better at scheduling Catherine time in my calendar and being like, hey, you're doing 3 things this week. You need to pick a night where you just like have a bath or read a book or, noodle around, do some sewing, whatever else.
But you also like date night and craft and, those are things that you really put into your life pretty intentionally.
Yeah, because you can't put all of your eggs in one basket, right? Like church is a super important part of how I keep my metaphorical mental health ship afloat. But I need to have other stuff because I can't go to church every day. And in the same way that my relationship is a really important part of my well-being, but it's not fair to my partner to say, you have to be the thing that keeps me well. Like, I want to be doing a bunch of different stuff so that I've got options, so that, like, if I'm having a really bad day and it's raining and I can't go for a swim at the beach, I can drive in my car and sing along to Reliant K super, super loudly, or try like a bunch of different things, having options. And yeah.
Love that. Let me ask our traditional final question. If you had the opportunity to meet God face to face today, what would you say? What would you ask?
I really wish I'd given this some thought beforehand.
I gave you the questions, babe.
But I haven't looked at my email in 2 weeks, which has been a real process for me. I think I'd want to talk about like how you fit all of the bits together, and like how do I as a person exist in a church, and a like church as in, you know, Catholic church with a small c, with people who really don't think I should be there. Like, how do I expand my capacity for love such that I can love them? Like, how do I get big enough to do that? I think that's my question, and has been something that has been a really cool and really hard challenge about like the Uniting Church. Like, I think it's been really good for me to be in church spaces with people who are less affirming than I am, but also sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not stretchy enough for this. Like, I can't stretch to do the love for that. So I think that's probably my
Great
question.
answer. You are one of my favourite people. It's been so lovely to welcome you into this community of faith, and then have you like dive right into some leadership. I'm so glad that you found community here, and a sense of sanctuary and friendship. And how wonderful is she? Isn't she amazing? Give it up. Oh.